So I wanted to come back on and expand a little bit more on some of the energy that I've been feeling and some of the messages that I've been getting from my guides. So the first thing that I want to remind you of is, weeks and weeks ago, I remember them singing that song, "We're All in This Together." And um, again, you guys, that's really kind of the big thing that we have to remember is that we're all in this together right now. They're reminding me that panic doesn't help. Um, I know there's kind of an eerie feeling in the air. Like I had to be in town yesterday, and there was just like an electricity almost in the air of people trying to stay calm, but also you could almost feel the panic below the surface. And then there was another spectrum of people where it was almost like they were just acting like it's a vacation and like taking their kids out to do things and playing in the play place. And I don't know, it's just really interesting how so many different people are dealing with this in so many different ways. So the one thing that I want you to look at is I want you to look at your immediate reality. So this is going to be something we need to focus on a lot in the coming weeks, at least in the near few days. Um, I really feel like this is going to be one of those places where you can practice being in this moment, being in this now moment. Which again, you guys have heard me say seems so cliche to say, oh, the power of now and being in the now and being in the present. You hear all of that all around by so many different people and so many different teachers, but it's really true right now because if you can keep yourself in this immediate focused reality, so like right now in your reality, are you safe? That's going to be where you want to focus because if I'm truly honest, you guys, I feel like this is kind of the tip of the iceberg. I'm not really sure how long this is going to last or how long it's going to take to recover. But I know that the virus is only one aspect of this. I've been holding back a little bit on it, but I feel like my guides were saying we really have to discuss this now. So a few things that they've told me is to really focus on your immediate reality and remind yourself that you're safe and that everything's okay. Um, and that we've got to let go of the worry about money. So one thing that I specifically asked them was, well, what about the finances? Because when they start cutting people's jobs, cutting the hours, those kind of things, and they said you can't get blood out of a turnip, so worrying about money isn't going to help anything. So again, you guys, in spirit, sometimes they forget the way that our lives really are. But basically what they're saying is worrying about that won't help. So again, you come back into the now. Like, are you okay right now in this moment? Worrying about what might happen isn't going to help anybody. And that's a really huge spiritual practice. It takes a lot of work and a lot of effort and a lot of meditation and prayer to get to where you can really do that. But I can promise you, the more that you can practice, what does my reality look like right now? Am I safe? That really will help. So the more you worry about things, the more you add energetically to all of the chaos that's going on out there. So the really interesting thing about this is, of course, there's a spiritual lesson behind everything. And I just want to tell you what I came across because um, you guys know that Jim and I are mobile. So we live in a fifth wheel and we kind of go all different places. I actually had a medical issue here recently in the last month. And so I've actually been staying at my brother's, and it's no big deal to hear coyotes here. Like we always hear them. In my old house where I used to live, we used to hear the coyotes. When I was visiting my son, I heard the coyotes. Um, so it doesn't really matter. Like coyotes or something. I mean, I'm a country kid, so like coyotes are no big deal. I hear them all the time. But what was really interesting is yesterday morning when I heard the coyotes, I immediately knew that it was a message. And that it wasn't just a random morning that I was hearing the coyotes like normal. This was definitely like, look up the coyote spirit animal so that you can get the message from what we're talking about. And what's really interesting is the idea of the coyotes is that they can live anywhere. It doesn't matter, like, it doesn't matter where. They live in the city, they live in the country, they live in the desert, they can live by the beach, like in the forest. They can literally live in any kind of environment. And I feel like that is why the coyotes were singing to me to bring this message to you guys, that the coyote always talks about like being adaptable and not being fussy about things. So you can learn to adapt in whatever environment you're in. Interestingly enough, this goes back to the messages that we've been getting for months, right? Like this goes back to September when I was saying, it's like we're going to go on a trip and you've got to pack your bags and you've got to be really selective about what you're packing, because we really don't know where we're going, but we know we're going to jump over this, big cavern. And once we get to the other side, there's no looking back. That's this is that moment where we've already packed the bag. We've been waiting on the other side to see what was going to happen. And I know a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago, I remember one of the messages talking about when you looked back, everything behind us had crumbled. And again, you guys, everything that I've been talking about for the last 2 years is leading up to this moment. So this is about holding tight to the divine faith, knowing that in divine truth, you're protected and that you're surrounded by angels, remembering that this is also a spiritual battle. So it's not just about the things that we see in front of us, right? And going back to the coyote, they can be playful, right? They have all this wisdom, but they can also be playful. So this is really about being willing to look at change through eyes of creativity, and holding yourself in a higher vibration despite whatever's happening around us, because we really are in that space where it's out with the old and in with the new. Like we've got to move into that newness. Right now, the best thing that we can focus on is contentment and happiness. So this is why I said on the reading that it would be good for us to be creative, meaning, color or play with the kids or build a fort or, listen to music or even watch a movie, read a book, like anything that's going to bring you joy, and be able to keep you grounded in this. The coyote's also about being simple, right? Simplicity. Like they're not too fussy about things. So it's really interesting that, again, that the coyotes came through. What's even more interesting is when I decided to, when I listened to my guides and they're like, okay, look, you really have to do this message. So I got into my meditation space and I sat down with them, and it's really interesting because usually my guides are pretty like jovial and kind of, they'll joke with me, and usually the message come in that way. Even when I'm working with the celestials, which is who I sat down with today. And to me, the celestials is just this group of beings that I don't know how else to explain, because Jesus is there. There's other light beings that are there. There's Pleiadians there. There's in this table, when they sat down, a lot of times whenever I see them, they're just like everybody's kind of standing in a group and we're all just kind of having a discussion. But this was almost like they were sitting at a boardroom at a table, like taking it serious. And so for me to see that when I went into meditation and see them sitting at a table, there's also a really big Indian chief that was there, like with the big headdress and everything. So it's like the wisdom of the ancients, which is something I've been talking about, ancient wisdom, for a long time. So there's something to be said about this. And I don't know if you guys are following any of the environmental things that are happening, but my son actually brought that to my attention too, because he's in environment. His whole job is in environmental stuff. So he was really intrigued with how quickly things are clearing up just by having people in quarantine just for a few days. So it's really interesting how I feel like there's a bigger lesson to everything that's happening right now. Again, you guys, the overall message is don't panic, right? So the more we can stay grounded in divine truth, knowing that this is something that needs to happen, knowing that this is something that's going to change life as we know it for the better. Like that's the other thing that we have to remember, is that it's going to change things for the better. But it's interesting, as I'm sitting here talking about that, one of my guides just showed me, like, it's almost like when you get a cut or a scar, like the cut or scar, the cut happens, and then like right when it's healing, it almost is more irritating and it hurts worse, because like the skin gets tight and then the scab comes off and all of those kind of things. It's almost like, okay, so the coronavirus is what started it. So that was the cut. And now it's that healing pains that are going to take place until this all settles down. Okay. when I ask energetically, what are we being shown? I feel like this is the shadow of the entire planet. So it's really an interesting thing because, and what that means when I say that it's the shadow. So any of you that have done any kind of work, a lot of times people call it shadow work. And what that is just healing the things that we may not want to admit about ourselves, right? So being willing to look at the things that we don't want to look at. And so when I pulled the shadow card, it literally says this is a time when you have to face your worst fears and look into the dark shadows of your own soul. You have to confront, it says you must learn to confront what you've avoided and instead walk courageously through it. So this is really saying that there's light at the end of the tunnel. And I feel like since I pulled this for the energy of the planet, because I'm looking at this as a whole, like this isn't just about, a state or a nation. This is the entire world is looking at this. This is the shadow of the entire planet. And this card is saying that denying the past doesn't help anybody. So we've got to look at how we've got to understand that this is a cleansing of the planet because the way that this is happening, everything's going to have to be reevaluated. And again, you guys, I've talked about this too, reevaluating all of the systems that we have, right? The government, the schools, the healthcare system, like everything like that is going to be reevaluated. And we're going to have to look at things that don't work anymore. And that's what this is going to be. Now, if the shadow of the planet but if you're looking at this personally, I would say, what are your deepest emotions? What are the things that you're afraid of? And how can you courageously look at those instead of just being in denial or brushing them off? Because not expressing not expressing your emotions, but not understanding your emotions, not allowing yourself to have the emotions that you're having. If you're feeling the fear, the insecurity, all of those things, it's okay to feel that, but don't allow yourself to go into it thinking that that's the truth of reality. That's a human emotion. That's a normal response in the circumstance. Okay, but we want to get past that and get into the spiritual truth, which is that in divine truth, all is okay. Okay, and that this is, as hard as this is right now, if we believe in the truth, then we know that everything has a divine purpose and a divine plan. And so the more we can hold tight to the light, the better it's going to be for everybody. The other thing that I wanted to talk about, and just for those of you that like to know which deck I'm using the John Holland Psychic Tarot Oracle deck right now. So those are the cards that I'm pulling. And so when I pulled the second card, it was interesting because I got the waiting game. And that just, again, affirmed to me that this is the event that we've all been feeling. This is what we've been waiting for, because so many of us in the spiritual work that we do, we've all been feeling like something's coming. We've been feeling it. So know that this is what we've been feeling building and feeling coming. None of us had any idea that it would come in the form of a virus. Like none of the intuitives that I follow, none of the friends that I have that do this work as well, none of us could see what it was going to be, but we all knew that something big was coming. So again, not to put anybody into fear, but just know that this is kind of the great awakening that the planet has been building up to. And I really feel like if we can see beyond and see the light at the end of the tunnel, knowing that yes, it's probably going to be hard for a few weeks, but knowing that at the end of this, I think we're going to have a new idea of how to make things better. We're going to have new ideas to help the environment. We're going to have new ideas to help people balance their money. It's going to give us a really good time to reevaluate what's super important to us. I think so many people are just living in busyness, being busy all the time, really just, not even enjoying life, but literally just living for that paycheck. And it may be that people realize that they can live with less, and maybe they won't need everybody go back to work. Maybe maybe it'll change to where you reevaluate kind of what you really do want in your life and what's really important to you. and figure out a way to come back more into simplicity. So this could really be, for those of us that are in the space to be open to it, this is really going to be a good um, spiritual time to really truly be quiet and be still and go within and learn how to meditate and learn um, how to just enjoy being in this life. Okay. Um, for the last card that I got whenever I was again sitting with my guides, it's the triumph card. So you guys, in the end, it's all going to be okay. And I just feel like we've got to hold on to that and know that it's really truth. So it's all going to be okay. And I know that in the midst of all of the crazy, it's hard sometimes to remember that, but it really is all going to be okay. We've just got to get past this rough patch. Okay. So this card, it's interesting. It says, when you tap into your inner guidance and balance it with self-control, hard work, and perseverance, it's likely to manifest a triumphant outcome. It's time for you to be single-minded and focused on the end goal. Visualize the successful results as if it were happening now. So I feel like, you guys, this is saying the more we can focus on being okay in the moment and knowing that life has ups and downs and that there will be challenges, but that when we tap into our inner knowing, when we tap into that divine spark, when we allow our guides to lead us, that in the end, it's all going to be okay. We're going to have a triumphant outcome. And it's really interesting that this talks about self-control, because a lot of the themes that I've been working with are radical responsibility. And they've been talking, the guides have been talking about breaking the dysfunctional human condition. And I feel like this is all part of that. Like, I feel like this is going to, it's almost like a reset. Like, everything's going to be shut down and people are going to have no choice but to reset. So when you move back into your life on the other side of this, really reevaluate what you want. Like, this will give you some time to think if there's things that you want to do differently, or things that you want to learn, or what you want to focus on. But again, you guys, my guides are saying in the end, there's triumph. So just know that it's all going to be okay. So as always, I feel like a broken record. All is well in divine truth. Talk to you guys later.